Okay everyone, welcome back to the channel today. We're back on iRacing for the first time in a very long time. I think it's been nearly a year since I've been on this game, so I wanted to get back on this game. I want to start getting racing on this game again. At the moment we've got the qualifying session on obviously iRacing. For a lot of the people that subscribe for GT Sport on iRacing, your qualifying is done in the actual race. You get 2 laps to do your lap. If you mess both of them laps up, you start at the back of the grid. So Spa, this is the first race that I've probably done. I did a race at Zandvoort also. That was when I wasn't really using a very good setup. I think I managed to come 4th in that race. It wasn't a particularly great race, but I noticed that Spa went on there, and it was Tuesday where it was Monday. I think it was Monday morning. I noticed it was on there, so I did a quick practice, and then I had 30 minutes before the race to practice. Got a setup from online and used the setup, and it was a reasonably nice setup. And decided to do the race. So this was my qualifying lap. So this is the start of the first lap, the first chance you get in the race. And going straight into that corner, you can see I've got a timed one at the top of the screen there. The timed one indicating that I've obviously cut the corner. So backed out of this lap because it's invalid already, and had to just cruise around a bit. Obviously need to keep some speed because it's quite a long lap and you only get 8 minutes to set these 2 laps in. So obviously just cruising around, and then I've got to go again. So coming to the end of the lap, needed to start this up, and a bit of pressure on. Once you do this, obviously this is your final chance to get a lap in qualifying. This is the IMSA series, so this is multi-car class racing. So you're going to have the GTEs, and I'm in the GT3. I'm in the Mercedes AMG GT3 for this race, and obviously a bit of pressure now because I can't push too hard, because if I make an error or if I get a times penalty, then this lap is totally invalid. So I had to take it reasonably easy, just try and keep the car in the margins, get just a base lap in there, and just get myself somewhere starting the grid. I didn't expect to be starting that high up anyway in this race, because obviously this was the end of the week. These races are on all week on iRacing. It's not like GT Sport where they change day lists and stuff. This race has been on all week, and this was the last day, so everyone's been practicing this all week, and I've just come on pretty much on the day it's ended and decided to do a race because I saw Spa was on there, and I love Spa. Spa's one of my favourite tracks. So you can see there, this time giving plenty of respect to that curb because I didn't want to pick up a penalty. The Delta's going to keep going green, probably because I was cruising around the lap. I wasn't really pushing through the corners to try and save the tyres for the final lap, as you can see there. Going into this really tight hairpin, trying to stay nice and tight and get the power as early as possible. But again, you have to be so cautious on Spa on iRacing in terms of picking up the times 1 penalty. You can get it for the entry to that corner, and on the exit there you run slightly outside the margins and you pick it up. This is one thing I do like about iRacing though, is that times 1 penalty is how they do their penalties. If you cut a corner drastically, you will pick up a penalty. However, if you do that in a race and you just run a little bit wide, it won't give you a penalty straight away like on GT Sport. It will just give you that times 1, and you get 17 of them available in a race. And obviously if you go over that 17, you're disqualified from the race, which is the best way to do the penalty system, I think. Obviously there is problems still in iRacing, but it's as good as you're going to get without a proper person running the penalty system. You can see this lap, it's been okay. It's not really been a massively great lap. It's just been just getting a lap in. I couldn't really push too hard. This corner's a real tricky one as well in the Mercedes, trying to get the car to stay stable through here. Luckily the setup I was running was fairly consistent through that corner. It felt nice. I can't share the setup because I've got it from a website which doesn't allow you to share the setups, and I don't want to break any rules. I think it's pure racing or something like that, Pure Racing Team that subscribe a free subscription. It's a month free subscription, and then obviously you pay after then. So I've got the month free for now. Just use that, and you can see managed to do an okay lap. But you can see I'm starting pretty much in the middle of the pack. You can see all the blue cars on the left are the GTE drivers. Lando Norris was in this race also, starting I think it was about P5 or something like that, and the P6 in the GTE cars, and I'm obviously mid-pack in the GT3. So this is going to be a little bit chaotic right in the middle of the action. Obviously at Spa as well, going through a Rouge, there's sometimes trouble after around the Rouge at the start of these races. Even though this penalty system, you still get trouble in these races, so I've just got to try and stay out of trouble and try and... Well, I felt okay at getting past a few cars because I wasn't really sure how my race pace would be, because I'm just coming back to this game for the first time in a long time. I've not been on it in a while. The pace is going to be slightly off, and obviously one thing I do like about iRacing as well is, unlike GT Sport, you have complete control from the start. So normally on a shorter layout, you'll have to do these standing, the rolling starts. You do a full lap, but Spa being a long track, they start you at the end on the back straight. So starting the roll and start hit it, you can see the GT3 cars, the leader of the GT3 pack decided to let the GT cars go and build up a lead. That's the best way to do it. Let them spread out, let them pull away. I don't like it when some of the drivers try and stay really close to the GT drivers. It just causes trouble. But you can see staying quite far back, and we're just cruising around now. I'm jumping to the TV replay camera for the start of this race. You can see myself right in the middle of a lot of cars, and it's quite a dangerous place to be. I didn't really like my qualifying lap, wasn't great, and it put me in a bit of a bad position. You can see having to start in the middle of the pack, but it gives me a chance to just practice my racecraft on iRacing. I've not been on it for ages. You can see there straight away the GT3 driver is gone, and he started this race. You can see everyone going flat out now. The green light's gone on and we're racing. So going into turn 1, you can see I stayed out really wide. I wanted to give myself a really wide entry into this corner to give myself maximum speed going through a rouge. Now going downhill now, you can see picking up the slipstream and just being very careful. You can see a car looks like he might have had a little bit of damage in front there. Maybe someone might have tapped him on the rear. As you can see, going in through a rouge now, and there's just getting through there flat out pretty much in this Mercedes. Slight little lift sometimes. You go into the left hand side and you can see there's chaos up ahead. There's cars flying, and this was just panic. I didn't know what to do. I just managed to somehow get through all that without any sort of incident, and that was really lucky. It wasn't the best driving. It looks like one of the GT drivers had caused something there. It was quite chaotic, but luckily for myself, managed to get myself right up into P4. So this was very lucky, starting from how far back I was, got through that chaos, and we'll have a look at that, what happened there at the end of the race, and have a look at it in detail about that incident, because it was quite bad and there was so much going on, and there was a lot of arguing going on in the lobby after that. Luckily for myself though, I go straight through all that, no penalty, no contact on the car. Luckily got through. I kind of just kept my foot down a little bit because I didn't know where any cars were going, so I just went for the risk it approach and managed to come out in P4. So I'm now racing drivers that are probably a little bit faster than what than I am. I know P1 was way faster in qualifying. I think when I was on the game last time, I was actually reasonably competitive here. I was in these conditions, I would have been hitting very low 15s in qualifying, maybe a late 14, which still would have been nearly a second off the leader's time. So it does show you that his time was very fast indeed. You can see there myself picking up a ×1 penalty straight away on lap 1. That's just the strike system that I talk about on GT Sport videos, that I would love GT Sport to incorporate, because you don't lose any time. All it's doing is giving you a warning. Basically, you pick up too many and you're disqualified. Obviously, if you cut a corner massively or more than the game thinks is fair, it will give you a time penalty that you have to get rid of. As you can see, very close racing here now in the GT3 cars. Obviously, most of the GT drivers that got out of that incident that happened ahead of the GT3 cars have pulled away. Obviously, the GT cars are a fair bit faster than the GT3s on iRacing, especially through the corners. Down the straights, it's not a massive difference. It's mainly through the corners that the GT cars are so much faster. But you can see P1 has just gone. He has gone away with it and he's pulled away. But I'm managing to hold on to the back of P3 here now for this. That's obviously the final podium spot in this race. This is a long race, a 45-minute race, and this is another thing why I really wanted to get back on iRacing, is because the race distances, 45 minutes. You can see myself battling with P5 there. I've got the inside line. He managed to get a bit of a slipstream, but I was managed to hold him off going into that corner. Braked a little bit later, held my line, and actually didn't lose too much time to P3. So luckily didn't get overtaken there. And now I've got to try and concentrate on getting back close to the driver in front. And like I was saying, yeah, 45-minute races, they definitely do lead to, we saw the chaos at the start there. That still happens, obviously, damages on an iRacing. So if something like that happens, you're out the race, and that's what I like. Mistakes were made in that, and I think then when we'll go back and have a look at the incident, there was a lot going on. There was more than one incident involved in that start. It was quite chaotic, and it was mainly the GTE drivers. It wasn't the GT3 drivers. It looked like battling at the front of the grid as well from the GTE drivers, which we'll analyse after and see what we can make out of it. It's quite hard though, because I think some of the drivers left and it caused cars to disappear and stuff. So we'll try and work that out as we get there. As you can see in front of me now, the two drivers in front are battling the way. It looks like the P2 driver has got damage on the rear of his car, so he's holding up P3. P3's putting a lot of pressure on P2, obviously trying to get past and use the extra speed that he's got in his car. I'm trying to obviously as well push as hard as I can to try and get as close as I can to the rear of that P3 driver. As you can see, the Audi has got past the Mercedes now. It looked like he kind of lifted and let him pass, as he may have realised that he was going to get overtaken anyway, but now I've got to try and get past this driver as well. It looks like he's got damage to the rear of his car, which will cause him aero loss and losing speed down the straights possibly, and it could also make his car really dodgy on drive in some certain corners. It all depends if that damage gets worse as well, because if you have a little look, it's quite bad on that left rear tyre. And on iRacing, I've had it in the past, if you have damage and you keep driving, it can eventually get worse and cause an issue with your car. So I've got to try and get past this guy as fast as I can, so I wanted to put some pressure on. You can see myself building that lead up and pulling away from P5, which I was actually quite surprised I was able to do in this race. I was actually surprised I was building the gap up and holding this speed. You know, I've not been on this game in a long time, and the setup I'm running is reasonably stable. It's consistent. It's not got the outright pace, but it's consistent, and I was just trying to just stay with these guys really and see if I could get some sort of result, because obviously my I rating was on 4.7, I think it was. I was only on the game for about 6-7 months, and then I've not played it for nearly a year. I got it to like 4.7, and the first two races I did in the Radicals on this game the other week, the Radical race was on there. I thought I'd try that. That was a disaster, that car. I'm avoiding that car at all costs. Some of the driving in that series is terrible, so I will avoid that hopefully, and just stick to the GT3s. I do prefer the GT3s, and that eventually want to start doing the GTEs as well. It's just that I really need to get some lone cell pedals, a mod for even my T3PA Pros, or some Fanatec pedals for that, because yeah, I do struggle with cars without ABS on iRacing. I'm quite heavy footed, so that's why I do like the GT3s, because obviously they've got ABS and I can push fairly hard and be aggressive on the brakes. As you can see, staying with this guy and trying to, I need to get past this guy. It's really important, because you can see I've got a few cars behind me, 3 or 4 cars behind there. It looks like 4 cars very close to the rear of my car, but then there's a gap between them and the rest of the GT3 runners. So it looks like I've got the pace to stay with the leading between P3, 4 and 5 and stuff. And P2, the Audi that got past the driver in front of me, has managed to pull away quite a bit. As you can see, I'm going to have a little look up here now, but not close enough into the hairpin, so no point risking anything there. Just need to stay in his slipstream and just try and find an opportunity. As you can see, got a really poor exit from that corner on the entry into it. As I tried to get really close, had to lift a little bit as he made that mistake, and decided to have a little look down the right hand side, but again, not able to get past him there, as he's just a little bit too far ahead. And you can see there P5 getting very close to the rear of my car also, as I'm trying to make a move on P3 and trying to get as close as I can. You can see, looking at this view now from behind on P3, looking at my car now is really pushing through a Rouge, trying to stay within the limits as well. You've got to be very careful for a Rouge. You can pick up that ×1. I think I might have actually picked up the ×1 there, you saw slightly over the white lines, and it will give you it there, but picking up that slipstream massively now and having a little look down that right hand side, having a look again, but you can see I'm not close enough, so you can see myself back out of that. It wasn't worth the risk of throwing that car down that inside, so just trying to keep it consistent and trying not to lose too much time. I didn't want to, you know, throw it up down the inside, end up losing more time than I need to. I need to stay in this slipstream to see if an opportunity comes to make it move. You can see that he is holding a few cars up. You can see how there's a bit of a train period behind him now. You've got myself and 4 other cars, 4 other GT3 cars, a few Audis, and I think mainly Mercedes there. Actually, it might be 2 Mercedes and 2 Audis, all in this train behind him, and trying to find the way past. As you can see, trying to push through these really fast left-hand corners and just trying to stay with them. I found my car not the strongest through them corners. I felt like it was a little bit understeery, the setup that I was running. I remember the last time I actually raced on this track, I remember watching Nicky Fim, and I robbed this setup when I saw it, and the setup really worked for me, but unfortunately I deleted all my setups. It wouldn't have worked anyway, because I think there's been changes to the game since then. It's been obviously a year, and there's been changes within the setups and stuff, because I did try one that I had on there, and that's why I deleted them all, because it was on Xamful and it just drove terribly. So I just deleted them all and thought I'll start afresh and try and learn some stuff, and obviously learn some stuff myself on these setups as well. I kind of forgot everything that I've known because I did know some bits that I used to do, but I forgot half of that now. As you can see, having a little look on the inside and braking earlier, I decided to have a look there, and he must have thought I'd thrown it up, but I hadn't. I'd actually backed out of that, but luckily for me, he gave me that place, and now I can get away, and I need to push as hard as I can now for obviously a few laps and try and build this lead up to the drivers behind, because they're obviously going to be looking for a way past as well, and trying to look for a way past that Mercedes that's behind me with the damage to his car. I need to straight away try and get out of that slipstream, so we're going to push really hard for a Rouge and try and build up that gap. You can see P2 has pulled quite a big margin ahead of me now, so there's not really much chance that I'm going to be able to catch him up. He was a faster driver anyway, so not worried about him. Just need to try and pick up a solid position really in this race, try and maintain the iRating. Obviously the iRating I expect to go down for the first few weeks. It did go down to 4.5 like I said with the Radical race, but I managed to get it up with a race at Zandvoort with a P4 finish, and this race I need to just try and get in the top 5 or something like that, just to try and maintain this, you know, not lose too much iRating. You can see there getting a little bit close to running wide, probably picked up another times one at that point. If you would have just seen that then, you would have seen the driver with that damage went flying off going into the right-handed hairpin. It looks like something went on his car, where that is probably rubbing on the tyre and something's happened, because he just flew off down the left, hit the barrier, and he's out the race. So unfortunately I haven't got him able to hold these cars up behind me now. I really was hoping that for a few laps he could hold them up and I could build a lead up, but now I've got faster drivers behind me, and I've got to really try and push, because obviously straight back on this game. This was my first ever day on iRacing at Spa in a long time. Obviously I've done Zandvoort, done a few practice sessions in that, got back used to the game. Didn't take me long to get back used to this game, I have to say. Quite surprised how easy it is to get back into iRacing in terms of the available grip you get with an alright setup. It's probably easier to drive than GT Sport, and that's why I kind of, it's probably more realistic, because GT3 cars have grip. You know, they're not hard, they're not the hardest cars to drive, they're not by any means easy, but I do like the way that on iRacing you pretty much have to run traction control. You can run it fairly weak, very few people will run it off. I think most people will run it with some form of traction control, and that's more realistic, because in real life they never turn it off. You know, I've spoke to a few GT3 drivers and they pretty much said, you know, Jake Dennis said, I remember speaking to him a while ago, and they never run it off. They might run it on a very weak setting for like qualifying, but in the race they'll run it a little bit higher to preserve the tyres and stuff. So that's how it should be. And you can see P4, I'm obviously now in P3 in a podium position. However, got some very fast cars behind me, and I'm managing to hold the gap to P4 and the drivers behind me, which I was quite surprised about. You know, I didn't expect to have this kind of speed at this point. You know, the early pace was, in general, my early pace in iRacing was not too bad. It was normally my end pace when the tyres started to go a while ago. I think that was because my setups that I was using were fairly aggressive. I found that the setup I used here last time by that Nicky Fim used was really aggressive. It was so fast for like the Blancpain race, which was a bit shorter, but at the end of the stint, going through the really fast left-hand corner before you go to the chicane at the end of the lap, it was like driving on ice, and you had to be so careful. You used to just flick out, and a couple of races I remember crashing there. But this setup that I was running this time by I'm sure it's Pure Racing School or something like that, really nice drive. You can see one thing I love about iRacing is the different camera angles you can use running on board. Now looking at the car from this angle, it really does look great, and it's one thing I wish GT Sport would incorporate into their game, is more variety on the camera angles. The amount of different angles you can use on iRacing is great. You know, we'll have a look at some of them as we go through this race, as now we're just trying to drive consistently, cleanly, obviously not trying to build up too many times one penalties. You don't want to get to a position where you've only got like one left at the end of the race. Spa, you know, anyone on iRacing will tell you how bad Spa can be for the penalties, you know, picking up the times ones. I've seen few drivers before getting disqualified in races because of it. And obviously if there's contact in a race, if you hit another car or they hit you, a lot of the time you can pick up either ×2 or ×4 strikes on top of that. So you have to be so cautious at Spa. And you can see myself trying to be as fast but as smooth and respectful on the track limits. This is the corner that can really catch you out if you've got a setup that's a little bit too loose. But you can see my setup, although it starts to go a little bit loose on the rear, it's fairly stable as going through this chicane. This was where I was losing a lot of time. I was finding that the setup I was running wasn't able to get on the power and grip coming out of there as well as I would have liked. It just seemed to spin up a bit and not grip and not bite. Some of it was probably the way I was taking the corner, but definitely think some of it was a setup, because I remember last time, like I say, when I used that other setup, it used to fling around that corner so much better. As you can see, pushing down now, down for a Rouge, and look at I love that camera angle on this game. It does look so good when you're watching it from there. As you can see there, in P4, I think that the leader must have pulled away quite a bit. It says P4 on the thing, but I'm pretty sure I was actually in P3 at this point of this race. I think P2 was the Audi, and the P1 was a Mercedes that was just gone. So you can see the cars behind getting very close, and I'm managing to hold a reasonable gap though. If you have a little look now on the blimp camera, which is another camera, look how great this looks for any of you GT Sport subscribers. How good was a camera like this look on GT Sport? Looking down from a blimp as we watch the racing going on, you can see that I've got a bit of a comfortable gap to behind me. You can see I must have about 2-second gap, pretty much dead on 2 seconds to the other Mercedes. This race is actually going really well for me at the moment. You can see myself pushing reasonably hard, not using too much of the track limits. I'm using pretty much what I am available, but not pushing it too far that I'm going to risk picking up a ×1. And again, another corner that can catch you out is that really long sweeping left hand corner. If you run too far wide out there, you can pick up a ×1 so easy. And I know it's so easy to be done because in the practice session I had before this 35-minute, I think I must have picked up one nearly a ×1 pretty much every lap on this track. As you can see, look how great it looks watching the cars chasing me down. You can see the gaps building up. You can see the gap that's developed between the 4 cars that are running behind me and then the other group. So it looks like I had reasonably good speed. If you look at the gaps that I've managed to pull up, I was reasonably happy with this. Obviously, a few cars will have picked up some damage in that starting instant, but it was mainly the GTE drivers. When I watched on the replay, it was a lot of GTE drivers that picked up most of the damage, and wasn't many. There was a few GT3 drivers that did get wiped. I think there was 2 or something that got completely wiped out, 2 or 3. I think there was an Audi that got wiped out. You saw it in the air, and I'll show you at the end of the race why that happened. As you can see there, coming to I've managed to build up a 1.4 second lead, but you can see now we skipped through a few laps and we've now got the Audi behind me that's closing in on me. I had to skip through some of the laps because I didn't want to just keep showing you laps of me driving around and trying to keep it where the action is. You can see that Audi is gaining on me. Now this Audi, this driver in P5 I think it is, you can see myself, I think I was actually in P4 at this stage. It says it down at the bottom there. The driver in P5 was a bit faster than me, so I had to just try and keep this smooth, try and not let him gain too much time on me too fast, because I was pretty sure that he would gain on me. You know, he's come through, I think he was 2 cars behind that Mercedes. He managed to get through all them, now through the Mercedes, and now he's looking at getting past me. But we're getting close to the pit stop phase now, so if I could just hold him behind till we pit, I might have a chance. Depends what strategy people run. You'll notice not so much short shifting and stuff going on this game. Obviously tyre wears ×1, fuels ×1, how it should be. It's a little bit more realistic in that way. Obviously with the longer race that does help. What they do is they start you on a fuel that you pretty much have to pit. There's no way you can get through to the end of the race without pitting. You possibly could on some tracks, but I think you'll just be too slow. So you'll find that everyone pits. Some people might do some fuel saving. You do have 3 mixtures available in this Mercedes. I'm running the most aggressive at this point. You can see me not over revving the car, because you might actually, I think you do save a little bit of fuel from not over revving, but it's nothing massive. So just trying to keep it smooth, driving pretty much as fast as I can without making too many risks. You can see there, a GTE driver has obviously had an issue, maybe come into contact with the wall. His car doesn't look to be driving in a straight line, it's kind of fishtailing a bit. Managed to get past him fairly safe. You do get a bit worried when you see that, because if his car's not behaving right, you just have to, you do worry about if his car's just going to suddenly spin out in front of you. But you can see now 0.7 of a second, 0.7 seconds behind me now, going through that corner. You saw my rear really did step out that time as I went through the really fast corner. The back end started to step out slightly, just about managed to hold it, and now that Audi is starting to get so close to me. And I have to say, this is such an intense race, because I've not done these races for a long time on iRacing. I have missed it, the battling that goes on, how close the racing is. It's probably a little bit more competitive than in terms of daily races, but it's a little bit closer to like the FIA races when you're on iRacing. Every race you join is a little bit closer to the FIA races. And you can see you're always going to get in a race where you've got, if you go on at a reasonable time, you're going to get in with a race where you've got some extremely fast drivers. Lando Norris was in this race, if no one knows him, the McLaren test driver. and you've got, I think there was a few other drivers, and so often you'll race against real racing drivers in iRacing. As you can see, P5 there, getting very close to the rear of my car. Managed to brake fairly late. I was a bit worried he might try and throw one up the inside, but he was fairly cautious. He didn't make any stupid moves. One thing you'll notice again, I feel like my setup wasn't really getting the rotation on the car as much as I'd like. It was a very stable setup, the setup by Pure Racing Team. It was very stable. It was nice to drive. Definitely good for as a like base setup that you could use. So I do recommend checking out their website. It was really nice and stable. I did enjoy driving it, but I felt like for me to get more out of the car, it needed to have a bit more aggressive about how to drive it. You know, being a bit more turning on the front end and being able to carry a bit more speed through the corners. As you can see, the P5 driver looking to find a way past. He's having a little look into his corners. He's trying to see where his car's a bit stronger. You can see my car getting a little bit unstable then, going through these corners, having to put a little bit of brake pressure on as I wanted to get the car rotating, running a little bit wide there, and again having to swing the car in to this corner. And another view, it does look great watching these views on iRacing as you watch yourself in front, and managed to get a reasonable exit, but went onto the grass, and that's lost me a lot of speed there. And he's having a little look down this right hand side now as we're going to go side by side through a corner that you do not want to go side by side on. You can see I'm on the inside, so I wasn't going to back out of that on the inside, and we go through it pretty much side by side, but he looks like he has to back out of that and gives me that position back, and luckily he didn't get past me, and that would have been I really didn't want to let him pass there, because although I was losing time now, I was considering letting him pass at some point. But you see behind, Calf pits there. He's obviously thinking that this battling is going to go on, so he's going to try and take advantage of the battling that's going on in front of him, pit early, and obviously just come out. The tyres will cool down a bit. He might be able to pick up some speed, but he's going to have extra fuel. So it's a risky strategy because you can come behind a lot of slower drivers. You have to be really careful with doing that on iRacing. I just prefer to run it to the end. Obviously, you don't change tyres in a lot of these races. The tyres are lasting fine, so no need to change the tyres. Just put the fuel in, and that's one reason why I just stay out, because I'd rather run on the lower fuel and just keep the car as fast as it can. As you can see again there, now I've managed to build up enough of a gap so he couldn't make a move now at the end of this straight. The slipstream isn't as strong as on games. I feel like they've adjusted the slipstream on this game slightly. I don't know whether it's just me, but I feel like when I was on it last time, the slipstream was a bit stronger than it is now, which is nice to see. It feels a lot more realistic. It felt like the only way someone was getting past you there was by absolutely flying through a rouge and then being right on the rear of your car, you're on the gearbox. Because the Audi, though, probably not as I'm not sure, but I don't know if it's quite as fast as a Mercedes on iRacing at the moment. I really don't know much about the BOP at the moment. I do know that the Mercedes, the Audi seem like popular choices. The McLaren seems to be a bit weaker. It used to be a lot of, when I was on it last, the McLaren was very strong. It doesn't seem as strong now, although I've still seen people driving that McLaren and putting in some very good times. So it's just probably very slightly been weakened, but not much. As you can see again, trying to pick up my pace now because I didn't want P5, P6 and 7 to gain on me and that guy that pitted. So you'll see me trying to push a little bit harder, trying to use more of the track and trying to make sure that obviously I'm not holding this car up behind me, and he doesn't, if he starts trying to look for moves to get past me, that's when I'm going to lose time, and that's when we're both going to lose time. So again, he's not close enough to make a move going into this really fast left hand corner. He has a little look on that left hand side but he clearly realises he's not going to be able to make that move, and he has to just stay behind in my slipstream, as I managed to go through that corner very fast there and stopped him being able to make a move into this hair, obviously the chicane. But I think possibly this lap he's going to dart off into pits. You can see there he darts off into the pits. He's pitting very early as well. I've decided to stay out. He's pitted at one lap. I think he's pitted one lap early, but maybe his car might not be as good on the fuel. I don't know whether the Audi's as good. There are some cars that are a little bit better on fuel. It all just varies. You'll notice that some cars sometimes in certain series start with more fuel than other cars. It all depends on their fuel rate. As we're now going to come to the end of my first stint, as I was obviously just driving on my own there. I didn't want to just show you driving around with no one behind me. So I'm going into the pits. Obviously another thing on iRacing, not like GT Sport where you can just fly into the pits at 200 miles per hour. You have to put your speed limiter on yourself, and I hadn't practiced this. That was the first time I've been in the pit lane because I didn't even practice it in the practice session, which is something that I should have done because it's a mistake that you can make. So I wasn't really sure where I kind of remembered from when I'd done it a long time ago. So had an idea, so just took it fairly easy, Didn't make any risks, you know, with the I didn't do any of the gear. You used to be able to do a gear change thing. I did it at the start, but I remember I picked up a penalty once, so I stopped doing that, and I did it on that little bit of straight, but back I thought I'm not going to do it too much just in case it picks up a penalty. So just pretty much going to brake very early. I'm not push the you know, the braking when I go into my brake mark. You can see this is why I like iRacing, because it's a little bit more authentic, and this is why I think this would be better if GT Sport was like, you know, you had to do all this yourself. I'd love it like that on GT Sport. You see brake hitting your marker, and then obviously just putting fuel in. You can see I put my fuel down to 40. Now this was risky because I had no idea what, this was my first race. Obviously I didn't have any idea. I've not got the calculator that you can get an app that calculates what fuel you need. Had no idea how many laps this race was going to go. All I knew was that I went through to the championship table, seeing that the top person had done 21 laps in their last race. So I kind of just guessed it from that and just thought I'm going to put 14 because I want to try and make sure that too many people don't jump me. You can see I was very late taking the pit lane speed limiter off. It was about a second late and it lost me a bit of time, but still I don't think I would have come out ahead of that Audi. You can see the Audi had jumped me fairly comfortably there, and he was about 3 seconds ahead, so about 2-3 seconds ahead. So not a massive you know, difference that would have made. That would have been maybe about half a second closer, a second closer if I would have done the pit limiter at proper time. But luckily there's no real cars behind me. I've got a GTE car which I'll obviously let past at the soonest chance, that without losing too much time myself. I wanted to push through him because I didn't want him to throw one up the inside. So I'm driving fairly aggressive at this point. Obviously the tyres need to warm up a bit again. You can see it's starting to slide a bit. You can see he's getting a little bit impatient, but I'm not going to let him pass on this point because it would lose me time as I go through that corner a little bit fast. But then I decided to let him go pass on the right hand side because he looked like he was getting aggressive, and I didn't want him to just throw one up the inside. You know, some of the GT drivers are a little bit impatient sometimes, and they feel like they have the right to just get past you at any point when you're also in a race. So I let him pass there as I didn't want him to just end up hitting me or giving me a ×1 or anything, because that's the one thing I didn't really see. I'm building up a couple of them times. Strike systems, you know, you've got 17 available. It's a long race. I didn't want to come to a situation if I was battling with anyone where I'd have, you know, it's so close to getting a penalty or being disqualified, sorry, from the race. As you can see, he's pulled away now. That GT car, obviously you can see the difference in speed. I don't think he was one of the fastest either. I think he's down in P14 in the GTE cars, but you can see visually how much extra speed that GTE car has got through the corners compared to the GT3 car I'm driving. So now coming to the end of lap 13, you can see holding this position, not really lost too many places. Obviously lost that one place to that Audi. He managed to jump me in the pits. Not much I could do about that. I could have pitted a little bit earlier, but I felt like my battle was with these cars behind me. I felt like he was faster and he would have got me eventually anyway. So concentrated on just trying to keep my pace as fast as it could be and not lose too much time, as we're now going to jump through to a few laps further ahead. So for the last few laps we're going to try and stay with the action now. Obviously didn't want to keep them, there was a few laps there fairly, you know, static and didn't leave them on, but now I've got the driver behind me starting to catch me up. You can see he's under a second behind, so about the last 3-4 laps he's managed to pick up a couple of attempts a lap. He's maybe been on this chicane. I found like through some parts of the lap we were equal. I was actually picking up a bit through a Rouge, but through this corner I was losing a little bit of time. As you can see, I just couldn't get the power to like swing through there properly, and it was losing me a bit of time. Unfortunately he's got very close, he's into that slipstream, so now I've got to really try and keep my pace consistent and not make any massive errors as I go through that turn one a little bit too deep. You can get away with that on iRacing. Obviously you go at a Spa as well, you know, turn one you can go in deep and get away with it because it's so wide through the corners. So I've managed to hold reasonable speed, and now I've got to really attack a Rouge just so that he can't pick up my slipstream too much, and I really went in there aggressively. Somehow didn't get a ×1 and came very close to picking up a ×1 there as I went over the curb on the left hand side. And we're going to jump on board with that blimp again and see how close the action is. You can see myself a little bit of a gap up, just enough to pretty much defend against any moves up the inside on any of the long straights, and then there's a reasonable gap to the driver behind him. So I've got to just try and keep solid pace, keep pushing. You can see the Audi going through the corner. You can just see the Audi just ahead of me there. You can see him going through the corner out of screen now. So that's the gap we've got to the Audi, and obviously the cars behind pushing very hard. I was not aware at this point what I was like for fuel. I could see that I had about 3 or 4 laps of fuel left. I could see I did know whether this was going to go to 22 laps or 20. I had no idea of the laps it was going to go to. I just had that, from checking out the championship table, looked at the laps that the leading GT3 driver had done, and seen it was 21. And I just guessed the fuel. I didn't even know how much laps, like the rate at which it was using fuel. I just used the qualifying as a guide and just did a quick calculation in my head. I thought that 40 is going to be, I wanted to go as aggressive as I felt safe to do, so I put 40 in to try and see if I could, get to the end with being quite aggressive. As you can see, the car running very wide through the corner. I noticed he was running out on them track limits a lot of the time, as he was really pushing really hard. He was running wide a lot of corners, even through this corner. I think a couple of times he was running outside to the right hand side and picking up that times one. As again, you can see he runs out wide there, so he must have picked up 2 times one strikes in a row, unless he was driving fairly safely in the first part, so he didn't pick up many at the start. And again, you can see the advantage he gets through these corners. However, he tried to give himself a wide entry into the corner and get on the gas really early, and he actually cost himself time, as I just stayed to the apex and got on the power really early and managed to give myself a bit of breathing space going into turn 1, and then again getting on the power as early as I can so that I can get through a Rouge without the possibility of him making a move at the end of the main straight up ahead. So pushing as hard as I can now through Rouge. It's really important to do this corner flat out in 6th gear. Hit that corner pretty much perfect this lap. You can see really hooked it up and built up a little bit of a gap to the car behind. You can see again he ran close to running wide there, and this is that gave me a bit of breathing space then, so I didn't have to worry about being overtaken. But now he's under pressure from the car behind him. You can see it on that top right hand corner. That Audi's put him under pressure. He's had to go defensive into that corner. This is all good for me because it gives me a little bit more chance to just drive smooth and keep some reasonable pace. As you can see in front now, the Audi is dropping its pace. I noticed it started to happen. He's lost a few seconds in the last couple of laps, so I didn't know whether he was having to do some fuel saving. It's possible with that early stop he didn't judge the fuel very well. He might have gone really aggressive to try and jump myself in the pits to ensure that he jumps me, and now he seems to be having to do some real extreme fuel saving because his lap times are dropping quite drastically, and there's only a couple of laps left in this race. I didn't know if it was going to go to 21 or 22. I had the fuel for 21, so I just decided to, if I run out of fuel, if it goes to 22 and I run out of fuel, I run out of fuel. This is my first race back in a while. I really didn't mind. I just wanted to keep pushing and just take a chance that it was going to be 21 laps. As you can see, the cars behind really staying static now. I seem to have got it fairly under control, this gap. You can see, looking at this view, they're not closer to making a move. And again, another view that I'd love to see on GT Sport. And this is great, the way you can change the views around on iRacing. It really is good to do. You can mix it up and make the footage just look so much more authentic. As you can see behind, the Audi had a little look there. He looks like he's right on the gearbox of that Mercedes. Going into the braking though, the Mercedes is very strong, and through this corner he was very strong in general. You can see him picking up pace on myself, but I managed to get on the power reasonably okay, not as well as he did. And again, he's very close to picking up a strong slipstream, so I've got to try and make sure that I get a good solid exit. As you can see now, the Audi in front of me is actually coming to screen. He's having to do some massive fuel saving. He must have underfueled quite drastically in the pit stop phase. Maybe he thought this race was going to go 20 laps. I wasn't, obviously this is my first race. I had no idea whether 20 laps or 21 laps was the norm for the, how long the race would go. I just predicted 21 and put the 40 litres of fuel in, which was enough for obviously that. But maybe he thought it was going to go 20 laps and had underfueled. As you can see, look how much we're gaining on this Audi now as we're going down the back straight, the main straight, sorry, going into the corner. And again on the braking, he looks like he's doing a lot of lift and coasting. So he's obviously trying to save some fuel, but now running on board with the helicopter camera as we watch all the cars swinging through these corners. This stage does really happen. This position on my first race back on Spa, my first real upload for the channel, I'm doing okay. I've not got a massive amount of speed, but for a top split race I'm doing okay to be at the front of the pack. As you see, coming through the trees there, it looks like he's saving his fuel for some of the middle section and then just doing lift and coasting going into the corners. It looks like he's lifting on the back straight and going into any major braking zone, just basically trying to coast into the corners to save the fuel. He must be getting really close to running out of fuel, and I was aware of this. It was clear that he was getting close to running out of fuel, so I'm pushing really hard and trying to make sure that if he does have any sort of errors, I'm able to take advantage of that and make him move where possible. As you can see now, we're obviously on the final lap. This is going into the last stage of this race. I've got the fuel to run aggressively. I've got a comfortable gap to the driver behind me, but again, he seems to have pulled out there. He's obviously accelerated hard out of the corner so that he can then lift and coast going into the braking zone. But I wasn't sure if he was going to make it to the end, so I was just pushing as hard as I can for this end. You can see they got a little bit closer, losing it, ran a little bit wide, but I wasn't worried there. I've got a few strikes left. As you can see, he's lifted and coasted so early. It looks like he's getting close to running out of fuel. He may have even been running out at this stage as he gets through that corner very nice. I get on the power. I'm going to go over to the left-hand side as it looks like he's run out of fuel there, but he's just gone over the line, and somehow he gets to the end without running out of fuel. So very lucky that he got to that end. I nearly picked up that final podium spot in P3, but P4, reasonably happy with that. And this is my first race back in a long time, so I can't really complain at that. So let's have a little look at that start incident. This is the GT cars. You can see cars appearing and disappearing in front. There's an incident there, and one car gets flung into the air, and it's all mayhem at this stage. You can see cars wrecked, and that's not the main incident. Obviously, that was the start of it, I think, of what happened. But now, because of that, you'll have a little see now. The Porsches, which obviously go in different speeds here now. There's a car on the inside there. He's had to brake. He's lifted, but he's clipped the rear of him. I don't think there was much that Porsche could really do at that stage. He's come through a Rouge flat out, and there's been an incident there. And then there's more chaos going on. And you're going to see now from the GT3 front runner driver, the lead driver in the GT3 car, as he comes through all this chaos. Obviously, there was cars that were pretty much cleared at this point from that part of the track, but now he's coming through to the incident that happened, and he just about avoids that car. But then the driver, I really can't explain what that driver did. He just, if you've crashed on the track like that and you're on a fast section like that, do not drive forward onto the racing line. He just drove straight onto the racing line and wiped out a GT3 car. You could see it get flung around. Let's have a little look. Watch now on my onboard. You can see that GT3 going flying in the air. I just didn't know what to do at this point. I've got a car on the right. I can see that incident on the left, so I go to the right hand side, kind of lifting off the throttle a little bit, but then back on the throttle there because we're past it all now. It's going to go green at this point. As it goes green, and obviously flat out now to try and see if I can get on the inside of this car on the left hand side, as I really wanted to get past that to make a move. But I think you agree that was a really entertaining race for my first race back on iRacing. Hopefully we're going to be bringing at least 1 or 2 races every week on this game. I look forward to more races. I need to pick up some speed, obviously. Obviously my iRating didn't suffer there. I picked up iRating, actually gained a bit, but I'm sure that it's going to drop a fair bit before I start getting back up to the speed where it was, starting to get close to speed for 5k iRating and stuff. So I need to get back to that and start pushing really hard. But another thoroughly enjoyable race. A lot more endurance based these iRacing races. Consistency is so important. Not so much about strategy as it is on GT Sport. It's more about just keeping consistency. But again, some great racing, really close battling, and thoroughly enjoyable. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Obviously, I'm going to try and keep a couple of these videos coming every week. And then obviously every day the GT Sport videos will continue. So thanks again for watching, everyone, and we'll be back very soon.